gift from the fairies. In Danvig's castle on Skype Island, under the glass hangs a cloth called Ambra Tasid by Clan MacLeod, a magical banner. It's a tattered silk about 45 centimeters long, with a yellow-brown background and red dots that were once golden crosses. In the 20th century, it was placed in an airtight case to preserve the fabric. Its origin remains debated. Alan Weiss, an English archaeologist, thought it was Syrian or Greek silk, maybe a relic. The clan leader said it wasn't silk, but a gift. A gift from the fairies? They brought military luck, healed livestock, sought good harvests, and even called herring to the lake near Dunvegan. According to legend, the power works only 3 times. After that, the cloth vanishes, leaving the clan unprotected. It was reportedly unfurled twice in the 14th and 15th centuries, and once more during the World War II. A rumor said Churchill asked the MacLeods to support the Allies, but the clan refused out of fear of consequences. A gift from the fairy Selkie and the family's certainty about the fairy's gift. For a museum worker, this is a rare fabric with a complicated biography for the clan. An insurance policy that can't be wasted. The silk keeps working in both cases. Fairies are made of silicon. We are all used to thinking that life is based on carbon, that carbon became the foundation for molecules, DNA, proteins, and all living things on Earth. But what if this is just one of the possibilities? Scientists have long considered silicon-based life. Silicon can form strong, complex chains, but these would likely be more rigid, crystalline, and unlike organic matter. There is a hypothesis that under conditions of high temperature and pressure, silicon-based beings, silicon life, could thrive. Imagine a world where living beings are translucent formations resembling stones, which grow, feed on minerals, and transmit information through vibrations. We might mistake such an organism for a stone and not realize it's alive. It's troubling that probe data sometimes reveals anomalies difficult to explain with carbon-based models. Scientists don't discuss living crystals seriously, though such theories show up in classified reports. And if silicon-based life exists, silicon-based beings, silicon-based beings, silicon-based beings. Near Albuquerque, New Mexico, tourists approached a canyon's edge. The rock formation seemed ordinary at first, but the longer you looked, the more it felt unusual. The cliffs have perfectly straight edges and even faces, as if cut sharply rather than by time. Some stone masses form clear cubes, each weighing around 100 tons. No signs of processing, yet everything is too geometric for natural chaos. Comparisons immediately started online. Some people recalled the Bimini Road in the Bahamas, stone slabs going underwater, while others mentioned the megaliths of Baalbek. But still, the main reaction is the same. It looks wrong, too perfect to be natural, too heavy to be man-made. Scientists can explain much, weathering, crystal geometry, pressure, fractures, but visually, it's unconvincing. Standing next to these shapes, you sense they aren't natural. So if they're artificial, who made them and for what purpose? This is not the first and not the last place where nature seems to accidentally depict someone's work. But sometimes there's a suspicion that it's the other way around, that it's not nature imitating technology. And we still haven't figured out who was here. Before us, the world's first gold. In Bulgaria, archaeologists excavated a burial site that turned out to be unique for the whole world. Here lay a man, and next to him were jewelry and items made of gold. They are dated from 4,400 to 4,100 before Christ. This means that we are looking at the oldest processed gold ever found. It is older than the Egyptian pyramids and Sumerian cities, older than all the known kingdoms that we are used to calling the cradle of civilization. Necklaces, plate-shaped bracelets, and beads found in the grave are crafted so well it's hard to believe their age. A piece of gold placed between the legs of the deceased attracted special attention from archaeologists. Scientists suggest that this object had ritual significance, connected with beliefs in the afterlife and ideas about fertility. The burial shows that gold was already seen as more than beautiful. It symbolized power and spiritual strength. These finds are linked to the Varna culture, a mysterious southeastern European civilization. Those who left these rich graves lived before famous empires, and their achievements remain largely unknown. But one thing is clear: thousands of years before our era, humanity already knew how to extract and process gold, turning it into an object of worship. Elements of life in asteroid samples. National Aeronautics and Space Administration analyzed samples from the asteroid Bennu, delivered by the OSIRIS-REx mission, and found organic compounds in them that are key to the origin of life. The findings include amino acids, ammonia, and formaldehyde, which may have driven chemical reactions leading to proteins and DNA. Scientists confirmed the samples have 14 of the 20 amino acids used by living things. Minerals found on Earth also suggest possible water presence. This data strengthens the hypothesis that asteroids like Bennu could have delivered important components necessary for the origin of life to Earth. Ancient labyrinth. Modern remote sensing methods provide archaeology with new tools for understanding the past. One striking example is the study of the area around Rujum el-Hiri, an ancient complex of stone circles northeast of the Sea of Galilee. This mysterious monument clearly demonstrates how satellite images allow us to view the landscape from a completely different perspective. Scientists analyzed photos within a 30-kilometer radius and found many megalithic structures, large circles with thick walls and mysterious flower-shaped enclosures near rivers. One theory suggests these may have served for irrigation, defense, or as livestock pens. The images also show mounds of different shapes and sizes, possibly burial sites or signal hills. The results of geological measurements are no less intriguing. It seems that the territory itself has shifted over the past millennium, which puts the hypothesis about the astronomical purpose of Rujum el-Hiri into question. The satellite image captures the multi-layered construction, an archaeological palimpsest, where later structures were built on top of earlier ones. Such research opens the door to the distant past by comparing satellite data, excavation results, and geophysical analyses. Scientists aim to reconstruct the lives of ancient Levant inhabitants and understand why they built massive stone labyrinths surrounded by complex agriculture. The underwater section of Tipasa, known as the Algerian Atlantis, is now studied as seriously as the coastal ruins. Marine archaeologists and divers document amphorae, cisterns, storage niches, and notably a rock-carved pier that appears to be an engineered structure, not a natural formation. These fragments come together to form a picture of a port that operated from at least the 4th century before Christ to the 3rd century AD. Moreover, the nature of the finds points to regular trade rather than occasional dumping into the sea. United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization insists on expanding the protected water area because the surf quickly erodes the cultural layer, and without official status, the site is vulnerable to intensive diving. We'll lose even what we've seen so far. The team is recovering artifacts found in the spring and exploring the structure's dark outlines with new equipment. Only repeated dives and deposit analysis will give a final answer. Before us lies either a sunken city claimed by water or the lower level of an ancient harbor now beneath the waves. What fascinates me here is not the word Atlantis, but the opportunity to look into the working mechanics of a real port that was sustained by 3 eras at once: Phoenician, Roman, and Byzantine. If we manage to document the layout of the docks and cisterns, we will finally understand what the coastal hub looked like, one that the sources are silent about, while the sea still preserves Martian coral. On July 24, 2025, the Curiosity rover sent a photo that at first left scientists stunned, a shape on a rock that was all too familiar to us from Earth. It looked like coral, a real fossilized coral, evidence that there might once have been an ocean full of life on Mars. National Aeronautics and Space Administration was quick to offer an explanation. No biology, just minerals shaped oddly by water and wind erosion. It's a rock, not an organism. Our minds just see familiar images where none exist. It sounds logical, maybe too logical, but how many times have we heard the same thing? A rock just happens to look like a statue. A shadow just happens to look like a tower. A shape just happens to resemble the outline of a living creature. At what point does the number of these coincidences become proof? Maybe it really is just nature's play, or maybe we're just not ready to hear it yet. The main thing is that Mars was alive, and that's exactly why we're so drawn to it, because deep down, we're coming home. The Oxfordshire mirror. Today, a mirror is a familiar object, but in ancient times, it was considered a magical artifact. Before you is a bronze Celtic mirror found in Didcot, England. It was created in the 1st century before Christ and is one of 18 similar finds that have survived to this day. In the Iron Age, such items were incredibly rare and belonged only to a select few, possibly priests or noblewomen. But what was it used for? For beauty, rituals, or perhaps for communicating with another world? Mirrors were often considered portals to another reality, and perhaps this mirror also played its part in shamanic rituals. Adorned with elegant patterns, this artifact remains one of the most mysterious discoveries in Britain. Its true purpose is lost to time, but who knows? Maybe it really held something more than just a reflection. Traces of cannibalism in Britain. In England, archaeologists have discovered the remains of 37 Bronze Age people with signs of cannibalism. The burial was found in a 15-meter deep shaft at Charterhouse, Warren. Analysis of more than 3,000 bones belonging to men, women, and children of different ages showed that they all suffered violent deaths. The bones show signs of blunt force trauma, cuts from dismemberment, and even bite marks on the hands and feet. Scientists believe cannibalism was ritualistic and possibly meant to humiliate enemies. The burial also contained remains of large cattle, which researchers believe symbolizes the mixing of human and animal remains to completely dehumanize the victims. This discovery disproves the belief in a peaceful early Bronze Age, revealing that mass violence, dismemberment, and enemy dehumanization have been part of Britain's history for millennia. Alexander the Great's tunic. Archaeologists discovered a fragment of rare purple fabric in a tomb at Vergina, which may have been part of Alexander the Great's tunic and symbolized his authority. The fabric was found in a golden crypt next to the remains of a man buried with a golden wreath. The piece of fabric is a rare cotton for that time, dyed in Tyrian purple, an expensive dye that was associated with royal power. Purple clothing was traditionally worn by Persian kings, and Alexander adopted this practice after his victory over Darius III at Donbass, emphasizing his divine status. Some historians think Philip II, Alexander's father, is buried in the tomb, while others believe the artifacts may have belonged to Alexander or his brother Philip III Aridaeus, who inherited the royal regalia. Among other artifacts, a golden diadem, a scepter, and an oak leaf wreath were found, items often mentioned in historical sources about Alexander's royal regalia. Scenes of hunting have been preserved on the tomb's frieze, and according to researchers, Alexander is depicted in a purple tunic, the tomb of Tutankhamun. This discovery became one of the most famous archaeological finds of the 20th century. This is the final resting place of the young pharaoh who ruled Egypt from 1332 to 1323 before Christ. During the 18th dynasty, unlike other royal tombs, its modest size and decoration are likely due to Tutankhamun's unexpected early death. It is possible that this tomb was not originally intended for the pharaoh, but was adapted for him due to a lack of time. Despite its modest size, the tomb surprised researchers with the quantity and magnificence of the burial items. Among the discoveries were gold jewelry, household items, a throne, furniture, clothing, and the famous golden funerary mask of Tutankhamun, now a symbol of ancient Egyptian culture. A total of more than 5,000 artifacts were found, each of which helped reveal important details about the life and death of the pharaohs. The tomb was discovered in 1924 by the British archaeologist Howard Carter and his team. Their discovery caused a real sensation around the world, not only because of the enormous amount of treasures, but also thanks to the exceptional preservation of the artifacts. which shed light on the era of Tutankhamun's reign. Tutankhamun's tomb stands out because it has stayed preserved in its original state, unlike all the others. This discovery became a landmark event in Egyptology and still remains one of the most important archaeological discoveries of all time. Let's hope it won't be the last. Bible Workshop. Archaeologists in Israel discovered a site quickly called a biblical mystery. In Kiryat Gat, just a few dozen kilometers from Tel Aviv, they discovered an ancient workshop for making flint blades, which is over 5,000 years old. At first, these seem like mere ruins and stone piles, but on closer inspection, it's clear they're not random tools, but evidence of organized production. Here, long sharpened blades and massive stones used to work them have been preserved. Hundreds of underground pits lined with bricks were found in the ground. Some were used for storage, others as dwellings or ritual rooms. All evidence indicates this place was a hub of craft and trade, a true city predating known civilizations. Ordinary flint rods were turned into knives and sickles here, with lines that look as if a true craftsman with tools that simply shouldn't have existed in that era had worked on them. Researchers observed that the blows to the stone were controlled, suggesting the craftsman knew precisely where and how hard to strike. Everything was done with jeweler's precision, and that's why the items kept their shape and sharpness for thousands of years. This workshop brings it all to life. In the Old Testament, the Canaanites are described as the Promised Land's first inhabitants, and now we see real evidence of them. These were real people with their own craftsmen, trades, and commerce, not just legendary figures. It's especially symbolic that the finds date to Abraham's era. It turns out that archaeology, step by step, confirms what until recently remained only in the sacred texts. The uranium cubes of Haigerloch. Haigerloch is a small town in the southwest of Germany, right under the church in a chamber carved into the rock. In 1944-1945, there was an effort to start a nuclear reactor, not a bomb, but a device that could sustain its own reaction for hours. Werner Heisenberg's team suspended hundreds of cast uranium blocks, those very cubes, on steel cables in a tank. At the bottom was heavy water as a moderator, surrounded by a protective layer, cables, and instruments. The concept is simple. Slower neutrons are more likely to strike uranium, sustaining a chain reaction without outside help. If this works, the reactor is operational. What went wrong? There was a chronic material shortage. Uranium arrived in inconsistent batches. Heavy water was scarce, and the cramped chamber limited how far you could space the cubes. The engineers adjusted suspension distances, rearranged clusters, and added rows, but the setup wouldn't work. It looked good on paper, but not in practice. In April 1945, the Allied ALSOS group arrived, opened the chamber, drained the tank, dried the suspensions, removed the uranium, and took documents and some equipment as trophies. The main items went to the United States. The rest were sent to scientific centers, and from then on, the cubes started their own separate lives. Stories occasionally emerge. One was found in a university basement, a physics office, or a museum. They're easy to spot. There's a mark from a loop on the edge. The surface is darkened, with an oxide layer. Sometimes cubes from Haigerloch appear at auctions without proper provenance. That's where the legends come from. Many documents were lost during evacuation, hidden in the forest, or taken by people, so rumors outlast the facts. Some conspiracy theories claim the uranium cubes from Haigerloch were used in both the reactor's suspended grid and the Die-Glocke project. They say the heavy metal was used as shielding elements or as nodes inside the bell-shaped machine under Silesia. Just add the concrete ring in Ludwikowice, purple Zerum 525, and Kamler to Haigerloch to complete the theory. The church was casting uranium blanks for the bell, which was supposed to dampen gravity. But when you go with emotions, there's nothing left. No blueprints, no records of materials issued for the bell, no photo units that these cubes would even remotely put. The surviving Haigerloch samples clearly belong to a nuclear facility. Their shape and suspension marks show they're from a reactor grid, not a time machine. So, the idea that the cubes are parts of the bell is just an unproven legend, much like the bell, which probably only exists in stories. Unusual metal of Egypt. A new study has revealed a simple fact about the Middle Kingdom around 2000-1650 before Christ. Egyptian craftsmen deliberately added arsenic to bronze, Special additives were found in slags and melts, and spices are high in arsenic. This is not an accidental impurity from the ore, but an intentional ingredient added to make the alloy harder, maintain a sharp edge longer, and reduce wear. A team from the Czech Academy of Sciences, along with colleagues in Cairo and France, conducted the analyses. The results showed that the composition of the bronze was controlled and replicated, which means that the workshops had stable supplies of raw materials and a clear technological process, rather than random attempts to make strong bronze. There is also a side conclusion for scientists. The lead that came into the smelting process along with spice can mix isotopic indicators, which is why the origin of copper is overestimated in a number of studies. Armor made of 6,000 scales. Archaeologists in China's Jiangxi province made an amazing discovery in the tomb of Liu He, the ruler of Haihun from the Western Han Dynasty. They found a scale composite armor that is over 2,000 years old. This find not only demonstrates the advanced level of craftsmanship during the Han era, but is also fundamentally different from the typical single-material armor of that time. According to the report from the Provincial Institute of Archaeology and Cultural Relics, the plates were made of lacquered iron, copper, and leather, with many of them being only 1 cm wide and 0.2 cm thick. The restoration took about 2 years, with specialists assembling around 6,000 pieces that were found stacked in the armory section of the tomb next to swords and knives. According to Yan Jun, the leader of the excavation team, their arrangement and size demonstrate an incredible delicacy of craftsmanship that was previously unknown for Han Dynasty armor. An engineer from the future. In 1961, in the archives of the Romanian city of Sibiu, a professor was going through old military records and accidentally came across a manuscript. Among the tables and calculations were unusual diagrams, multi-stage rockets, stabilizers, nozzles, and references to fuel, not crossbows or cannons. It resembled 20th century technical documents, yet it was made in the 16th century. The author turned out to be Conrad Haas, an artillery master who served at the court in Transylvania. He managed the barracks, drew diagrams, and wrote without embellishments or unnecessary words. His treatise was simply titled How to Make a Good Rocket, capable of lifting itself into the sky. Drawings, calculations, a few brief explanations. That was all. As if he were trying to create something new back then. Little is known about his life. He was born in 1509, was an engineer, did not take part in battles, but created weapons. At the very end of the manuscript, he left a phrase unlike anything else: more peace and less war. Let the guns stay under the roof. Let there be no shot. Then the prince will save money, and the gunsmith will save his life. This is not a statement, just a quiet line at the bottom of the page. The Forgotten Secret of Ant. Archaeologists found a 3,500-year-old city called Pendico in Peru's mountains, which appeared to be more than just an ordinary settlement. At 600 meters altitude, temples, homes, and round buildings remain on a terrace. The central square's walls feature bas-reliefs of figures crafted from seashells. These instruments produced a low, resonant sound that could be heard for many kilometers. Clay figurines, a beaded shell necklace, and ritual object remnants were also found here. Everything suggests that this place played an important role not only in the lives of the local people, but also in the connections between different cultures. Scientists believe that Pendico was a trading hub that connected the coast with the Andes and the Amazon jungle. The city thrived during the era of the earliest Middle Eastern and Asian civilizations. But what surprised archaeologists the most is that it is located very close to coral, the oldest civilization in America, which is more than 5,000 years old. Coral developed in isolation and disappeared due to climate change. Pendico appeared to maintain many traditions. Today, Peru is known for monuments like Machu Picchu and the Nazca Lines. But such discoveries remind us that the history of this land is even deeper than it seems. Civilizations were born here, lived, and disappeared long before the empires we know appeared. The oldest hairstyle is an amazing find. A preserved hairstyle about 3,300 years old, discovered on the head of an ancient Egyptian. The intricately braided braids are striking in their complexity and excellent preservation. In ancient Egypt, hairstyles were of great importance and were often used to express status, age, and social position. Hair care included the use of oils and aromatic products, which also contributed to their longevity. Preserved details such as braids allow scientists to better understand how important appearance was to ancient Egyptians and what skill was required to create such hairstyles. An incredible discovery under the waters of the Nile. Archaeologists made an amazing discovery under the waters of the Nile in the Aswan area, a collection of ancient Egyptian artifacts and rock drawings related to the era when the city experienced a powerful flood. The relics date to the reigns of pharaohs like Amenhotep III, Thutmose IV, and Semetic II. About 4,500 years ago, Aswan was an important trade and military center. Gold, wood, and spices were traded here, and local granite quarries supplied materials for temples, obelisks, and pyramids. However, after the construction of the Aswan Dam, most of the city ended up underwater. The Franco-Egyptian Archaeological Mission discovered unique rock reliefs depicting pharaohs, hieroglyphic inscriptions, and other sculptural elements. The work used modern technologies like underwater scanning, photogrammetry, and 3D modeling, allowing detailed documentation and digital copies of the discovered artifacts. The depiction of Amenhotep is of particular interest. He ruled Egypt for about 40 years and left a rich legacy. His burial was located in the Theban necropolis on the west bank of the Nile, opposite modern Luxor. Unfortunately, many monuments associated with his era were damaged by floods, but the new discovery gives hope for the restoration of these historical relics. The Thuringia dagger. After heavy rains near the village of Gütersleben in northern Thuringia, a bronze dagger emerged from the soil. The finder left it in place and notified archaeologists. In Weimar's restoration workshop, it was confirmed to be a 3,500-year-old Bronze Age dagger. Plate-shaped tang type, the blade's wide, flat base was riveted to a handle, typically made of wood, horn, or bone. The technology was advanced for its time, casting a bronze plate, shaping the edge, polishing the tang base, and drilling rivet holes. On such items, the traces of the rivets show exactly how the handle was attached and whether the blade could withstand the load. Next comes alloy analysis, the proportion of tin and impurities, X-ray examination, and corrosion stabilization. If any organic remains have survived on the tang, it's possible to reconstruct the shape of the handle. The artifact was found without a grave or cultural layer, likely pushed to the surface by shifting karst soil after heavy rain. This is a significant discovery, direct evidence of craftsmanship and trade in Bronze Age Germany. These daggers may have been weapons, status symbols, or earth offerings. Experts will determine their exact purpose. Unauthorized searching is banned in the region, and this reporting method preserves both the artifact and its information. After the research, the dagger is planned to be displayed at the Elric Regional Museum. It will move from the field to a showcase with a clear history of its origin. In 2019, the team from Delski University received pig brains as part of their research on bringing brains back to life. 4 hours after the slaughter, samples were connected to a closed system where pumps slowly circulated a warm, oxygenated protective solution through the vessels. The task sounded simple, but was actually complex: to maintain tissue that had surpassed normal concepts of life after death. After a few hours, the vessels began to let the solution flow through again. The cells restored their basic metabolism, neurons held an electric charge, and responded to local stimuli. This is not resurrection. There was no organized brain activity, and it was further suppressed with medication. The researchers stayed within ethical boundaries and did not try to induce consciousness. The main conclusion is obvious. Death isn't instant, but a series of stages. Individual functions fail one by one, and some can be reversed if tissue isn't damaged. That is why, in cryobiology, freezing people is not what matters most. What matters is preserving the structure and connections without ice and ruptures. The more carefully the tissue is preserved, the higher the chance to restore basic processes later. Experiments show that the process of dying is stretched out over time, and cells have a short window when they still hold on and respond to stimuli. If you stop ice crystals from damaging membranes and support the environment, functions can gradually return. That's why preserving tissue is the top priority, so there will be something to revive later. Isaac Newton predicted the end of the world. Isaac Newton is one of the greatest minds in history. He changed humanity's understanding of the world by formulating the laws of motion and gravity. But his interests went well beyond physics. He was also a mathematician, astronomer, alchemist, and theologian, seeking to fully understand the world. One of the most curious discoveries associated with Newton was his predicted date for the end of the world, the year 2060. He calculated it based on the Bible, specifically the book of Revelation. Newton believed that the 1,260 days mentioned there actually meant years. By counting this period from the year 800, the time of the founding of the Holy Roman Empire, he arrived at 2060. However, the scientists said this was only a hypothesis. Unlike modern scientists who distinguish science from religion, Newton viewed them as one. He believed the world followed divine laws and sought to uncover them. At the same time, he was skeptical of hasty prophecies and warned that inaccurate predictions could discredit the Holy Scripture. Today, his views may seem unusual, but in his era, natural philosophy covered both science and the search for the divine plan in nature. Newton was not only a great physicist, but also a man who sought the truth in all its forms. Merlin's parchment. Archives often seem dull, dusty folders, bills, and forgotten names. That was true in Suffolk County at an old English estate. A routine 16th century ledger reveals old French text with red and blue initials beneath its leather cover. The archivist pauses. An investigation begins, uncovering Britain's most mysterious legend, Merlin and King Arthur. The parchment was a fragment of a 13th century manuscript from when Knights of the Round Table legends were most popular. This particular part is from the suite Vulgate du Merlin cycle, describing how Merlin acted after Arthur's coronation. Fewer than 40 such copies have survived, and each one is unique, but this one was sewn into a cover like trash, because in the 16th century, old parchments were often used for bookbinding. Paper was expensive, scholars couldn't touch the find because it was too fragile. That's when technology came into play. Multispectral imaging revealed the faded ink, while X-rays, first used for fossils, allowed us to see inside the book. It became clear this was a new, previously unknown scene. There are 2 episodes. First, Gavin fights pagan kings at Cambernick. Second, during a feast, a blind harpist with a white dog enchants everyone, requests to carry the banner in battle, and then vanishes. Then it becomes clear that it was Merlin, who changed the course of events, magic, disguise, legend. But that's not the main point. The main thing is that all of this could have remained on the cover forever. A story written by monks 7 centuries ago survived wars and obscurity, resurfacing only when someone noticed a strange pattern on old leather. A fantastic return. In the spring of 1969, a young student, Aldo Stefano, was relaxing on Mount Sinai Beach in New York. He wore a gold ring with a garnet, a graduation gift from university. At one point, it slipped off and vanished into the water. Al tried to find it, but the current quickly concealed it, and he accepted the ring was lost forever at the bay's bottom. Decades passed. The student became an oncologist, moved to Texas, retired, and had long since stopped thinking about the loss. And then 50 years later, Dave Orlovsky was searching the same beach with a metal detector. His device gave a signal, and in the wet sand, a massive ring in perfect condition appeared. It had the university's crest and symbol on it, and the owner's name was engraved inside. Orlovsky first added the find to his collection, but his wife convinced him to find the owner through social media. Orlovsky reached out to the university's alumni and soon got in touch with Di Stefano himself. He was amazed, since the ring was found just half a mile from where he had lost it. The package with the find arrived to him in less than a week. Today, the now gray-haired doctor wears it on his hand again and says he's making up for the lost years of his youth. Now in 3D subtitles. We are used to seeing submarines in archival photos, black and white silhouettes, and legends, but now everything is different. Submarines are already being counted like multi-beam architecture. Sonar, photogrammetry, underwater laser, and a Type 7 or 11 hull appear on screen, revealing details down to the rivets that tell the story of a whole war. What stands out on real models is the damage. One submarine's stern is ripped open like a can of sardines. A depth charge exploded near the rudder, blowing out the hull plates and creating a crack along the seam that clearly shows the shock wave's direction. This is not speculation. 3D reveals the metal's shape and it's accurate. Another submarine has a bow breach. Below the waterline is a cable mark, likely from snagging a mine anchor, then a destroyer finished it off. Things like this used to be guessed at based on eyewitness accounts. Now they are visible. The most striking thing is the hatches on many of the submarines. They're stuck in one position. In some places they're open. The crew tried to get out. In others, they're closed and jammed. Inside, you see air bubbles and sludge, indicating it sank fast. The propeller markings, conning tower shape, and periscope housing type. With these, it's easy to link the submarine to its departure date and last radio contact, revealing how the final mission went, its base, patrol area, and where it was lost. In reinforced sections, you may see initial failures like misalignment after overloading, torpedoes, a damaged diving plane, or a broken actuator, leaving the submarine a stationary target. Finally, the condition of the hull shows how it lies on the seabed, chipped paint along the edges, growths, sediment streaks along the side. These signs make it clear where the current was pulling, what broke off first, and which elements detached after the sinking. All of this becomes interesting to us because now we can study old military equipment in great detail, even the ones that are kept deep underwater. Now we can recreate the moment the submarine sank, show what a naval battle looked like in the 1940s, and compare all of this with the archival documents that we still have. Mysterious Idbaraks. Turkic legends remember a people with a human body and a dog's head, the Idbaraks. In Oguz Khan tales, they are set in Siberia's northwestern outskirts. The name means dog and long-haired breed. They are described as having dark skin, mottled fur, and a dog's skull. Oguz Khan once fled from them, went into exile, then returned and defeated them. He gave the conquered lands to his son Kipchak, ancestor of the Kipchaks. Kipchak's name is linked to a legend of being born in a hollow tree. To understand why the dog-headed people appeared in these stories at all, we need to remember the role of dogs among the early Turks. The dog was a helper and a guide, not an evil creature. The 12-year cycle includes a year of the dog. In shamanic rituals, people mimicked its actions. In myths, the dog Barak carries the shaman upward, and in Altai tales, the dog protects the first people from Erlik as their own. This represents protection and a link to spirits. In contrast, Idbaraks symbolize outsiders, canine but not protective, serving as a boundary and threat. This approach is understandable. It marks our world's boundary and reminds us of rules on foreign land. Our neighbors show similarities too. Greek cynocephaly, Indian canine guardians, and European accounts of northern tribes. The pattern is always the same everywhere, an unusual face, a sign of distance. Some may debate if the basis was an actual mask, totemic headdress, or unusual-looking neighbors, but tradition doesn't require that. In legends, those on the other side were called Idbaraks. They marked their world's boundary with the burial of a celestial guest. In 1901, an expedition of British archaeologists led by Lord Williams Campbell conducted excavations in one of the ancient tombs in the desert. Near the Pyramid of Giza, opening the massive sarcophagus caused a sensation among researchers. Inside was a mummy that was significantly different from all the known remains of ancient Egypt. The creature's height exceeded 2.5 meters, and its skull was unusually elongated and narrow, resembling the images of gods on the walls of Egyptian temples. The bones turned out to be significantly denser than those of humans, and their structure indicated increased strength, as if they were meant for life in different conditions. Strangely, the body showed no signs of embalming or autopsy, but was perfectly preserved, as if in stasis. On the sarcophagus, archaeologists found engravings that mentioned a messenger from the stars who arrived during the time of the pharaohs. The hieroglyphs suggested that beings from the sky taught ancient Egyptians architecture and astronomy. Some symbols resembled star maps, and on the inner walls, graffiti depicted flying disc-shaped objects. This discovery sparked many theories, from alternative history linking Egypt to extraterrestrials, to speculation about a loss experienced by humanity. Soon after the excavation, the artifact vanished. It was moved to a private collection, and references were swiftly removed from official reports. A message from aliens. Easter Island, lost in the southern part of the Pacific Ocean, became famous for its giant Moai stone statues and the mysterious tablets with rongo-rongo inscriptions. These ancient tablets, covered with strange hieroglyphs, still remain one of the greatest archaeological mysteries. Scientists believe that rongo-rongo is the script of the Rapa Nui civilization, which flourished on the island until the 18th century. The history of their discovery begins in 1864, when the French missionary Ian Einer first paid attention to the wooden tablets. The tablets, covered with unusual symbols, were made from toramiro wood, which grows on the island and could be found in almost every home. However, soon, most of these artifacts disappeared due to internal wars and destruction. About 25 tablets have survived, and their study revealed a unique writing style resembling an inverted boustrophodon. This method of recording signs had only been seen among the Incas before. The tablets show figures of women, animals, plants, and human-like beings. Scholars think these symbols might have recorded rituals and myths. Of particular interest is the similarity between rongo-rongo and other ancient scripts. Some signs resemble the hieroglyphs of ancient Egypt and India, as well as the symbols of the Harappan civilization that flourished in the Indus Valley. Parallels have even been drawn with the scripts of the Kuna Indians from Central America and drawings on the island of Sumatra. This has led to theories of ancient cultures connecting across oceans. Efforts to decode rongo-rongo persist, but the script remains largely undeciphered. One theory is that it describes rituals involving sacrifices to the gods. Another hypothesis, more fantastical, suggests an extraterrestrial origin for these symbols, hinting at contact with alien civilizations. Otherwise, how could people on different continents back then have similar writing systems? And yet today, even though we have a huge number of connections with each other through phones, satellites, and the internet, we still speak different languages. The mystery of rongo-rongo remains unsolved, but its study continues to inspire scientists and enthusiasts all over the world. The cursed emeralds. These emeralds, which are called cursed, became one of the most tragic discoveries in the history of treasure hunting. They were discovered by J. Miskovich, a man who dedicated his life to searching for ancient treasures. In 2010, off the coast of Florida, he managed to find a cache of emeralds valued at several $1 million. Initially, it appeared to be a life-changing stroke of luck, but the find quickly drew attention from the media and federal agencies, including the FBI. Legal proceedings and investigations began, aimed at determining the origin of the precious stones. Complex legal battles and public pressure turned Miskovich's life into a nightmare. Constant accusations and pressure from the authorities made his existence unbearable, and eventually he committed suicide. This tragedy inspired the legend of cursed emeralds that brought owners pain and suffering instead of wealth. Today, this story serves as a grim reminder that behind great discoveries, there can sometimes be terrifying consequences. The statues of Rapa Nui, Easter Island, located in the southeastern part of the Pacific Ocean, on the edge of the Polynesian Triangle, became home to nearly 1,000 monumental statues created by the ancient Rapa Nui people. The Moai figures were carved from volcanic tuff in the Rano-Raraku quarry, and many of them remain there to this day. However, a significant number of the statues were transported and installed on special stone platforms called ahu along the coast of the island of Moai. Notable for their disproportionately large heads, which make up about a third of the statue's total height, these legless monuments range in height from 2 to 10 meters, although the largest unfinished statue remains in the quarry and reaches 21 meters. The Moai were seen as embodiments of ancestral spirits and were vital to Rapa Nui ritual life. How the island's ancient inhabitants moved these giant sculptures across rugged terrain remains unclear. There are hypotheses that they used ropes and ingenious technologies to make the statues walk. The Moai, turned with their faces toward the villages, probably symbolize the protection and strength of the ancestors watching over their descendants. Metal objects from Guyas. The La Manna caves in Ecuador have attracted the attention of not only archaeologists, but also enthusiasts of mysticism and ufology for many years. The story of the discovery of metal objects in these caves is shrouded in mystery and mysticism. According to legends, metal plates were discovered in Lamana, engraved with symbols that resemble modern diagrams, maps, and even technical drawings. These discoveries became the basis for hypotheses about the existence of an unknown civilization in the distant past that possessed highly advanced technologies, or about contacts between ancient people and extraterrestrial beings. Supporters of these theories claim that such complex and detailed symbols could not have been created with primitive tools and must be evidence of more advanced knowledge. Some researchers even suggest that the plates could have served as star maps or technological instructions left by aliens. However, most scientists are quite skeptical about these findings. There is no convincing evidence that the metal objects from Lamana actually date back to ancient times. Some experts point to possible traces of modern metalworking and the inconsistency of these artifacts with the styles and technologies known in ancient Ecuador. Moreover, there are no reliable datings or context for the discovery of these items, which further undermines their authenticity. Archaeologists believe that these artifacts could have been created in a later period, possibly as part of a hoax or to attract tourists. Thus such. Despite the fascinating and mysterious stories about the metal objects from Lamana's caves, their origin and significance remain in question. The story of Lamana's caves is an example of how myths and legends can intertwine with reality, creating fascinating but often unreliable accounts of our past. Rosamunda, daughter of the Egyptian king Cunaman, was born in the middle of the 6th century when her people were desperately fighting against the Lombards. Alboin, the king of the Lombards, killed her father and forcibly made Rosamunda his wife. According to legend, during a feast in Verona, he offered her wine in a cup made from Cunaman's skull, mockingly saying, "Drink with your father." Deeply insulted, Rosamunda swore to take revenge. In 572, she plotted a conspiracy, waited until Alboin fell asleep, took away his weapons, and tightly tied his sword to the bed, then let her accomplices in. The king woke up, tried to defend himself with a stool, but was quickly killed. Afterward, Rosamunda fled to Ravenna and agreed to marry the exarch Longinus, though she had long had a lover. Squire Gelmigus was Alboin's half-brother in one account. After her feelings for Gelmigus faded, Rosamunda chose to poison his wine. But he noticed the trick, and holding his sword to her throat, forced her to drink the poison herself. Thus ended the tragic story of a woman whose life and actions were defined by a thirst for revenge. This tragedy, recorded in medieval chronicles, became a symbol of ruthless passion and fate in the early history of barbarian kingdoms in Italy. Please support the channel by liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. This helps release new videos faster. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.